Good morning again. As I mentioned, my name is Jillian, and I am here to get your feedback. Our theme today is communication, and one of the things that we want to hear from you are, as stakeholders, are a couple of different things. One is some of the feedback we got was that the communication channels we implemented weren't as effective as we would have liked. For example, our way of work has been historically to move information to the principals and then have principals share it out. And so we've gotten feedback, and not in various forms from various people, that not every communication, some schools were really effective at that communication pathway, others were less effective. So we really want to brainstorm some ways that we make sure we're giving information to teachers if and when we have to retreat. And to put this all in context, we're really speaking about the move to, yesterday Governor DeSantis announced that it's his expectation that we open 100%. Yesterday also, we had 1,600 new cases of COVID in the state of Florida, which was a new high. And so as I integrate both pieces of information, I think that it would be reasonable to that while this governor is saying to school districts you are to open on August 10th, that at some point in time, it's probably reasonable that we'll have to close down in some measure because of the spread of coronavirus that manifests as COVID. And so what we're trying to do is be more structured in how we disseminate information. Today's theme is communication. We were, for the good of the group, 4 p.m. on that Friday, March 13th is when we got the call from the governor, Commissioner Corcoran, that we were closing. And so we had to use the channels we had to communicate and the pathways, but we'd like some ideas because we want to improve. So the purpose of today is, one, to get a sense from you, how would you like us to communicate in a way that is meaningful and productive? We all teachers, but is email the best way? Should we have our own channel? These are all different kinds of ideas we've floated around. So that's question number one. So Scott, I don't know if whoever wants to kind of jump in. So the question is, how can we improve our communication to teachers? Should we have to retreat home? What worked or didn't work?
And what I'd like everyone to do is, Shari, your hand went up. And so if you know where the raise your hand function is, it's going to let Shari go ahead and begin.
First of all, I want to commend the relationship between Leon County Schools and LCTA. I think that under the circumstances, we did a remarkable job. Is there room for improvement? Yes, always. And that's why I'm very happy to be a part of this process right now. As far as communication is concerned, one thing we all have is email. And so that is probably the primary source for how we should get our information. I would recommend that, and pardon me for holding my head, I'm experiencing some vertigo. Anything that is not open to interpretation, that means site-specific decisions, things that could be interpreted, well, at our site, we need to do it XYZ way, that they go directly to the teachers, and that things that have to be interpreted by site, then those things funneled then through principals. Thank you.
You want to see a chat?
It's your
Yeah.
I'll link it and I'll read the chat too.
Okay. So that way,
yeah.
There you go.
I got it.
Yeah, okay.
Thank you, Shari. I took that note.
We've got Jan Roberts, who's next. Go ahead, Jan. Jan, can you unmute yourself, or you need some help here? Oh, you're unmuted. All right. While we wait for Jan, is there anybody else that would like to provide some feedback about communication and what would work best? What were some things that you kind of Go ahead, Sheria.
I was going to say, I think in the chat, Martina wrote a listserv just for teachers. I think that's a good idea.
Scott, I think I unmuted myself. This is Jan Roberts.
There you go. Yes, Jan.
Hey, sorry, should I talk now?
Yes, please.
I just want to say, I'm sorry, about the way you communicate with us. We did get a lot of communication. I'm a speech language pathologist at Clark Lakes Elementary. So this might be unique to us, but I found that the email might come from Kathy Shields at All ESE. Then it might come from Jenny, the same email would come from Jenny Duggar to SLP. Then my program specialist, Shanika President, would send the same email, and it just went on like that. And then the principal, and then we would get the same thing, honestly, like 7 times, but not being familiar with the information, we'd go have to sit and read the whole thing to make sure we weren't missing something. So, and I understand this is all new to everyone, but that was really difficult to get repeated identical information that you have to read every line of. So I don't know if there's a way to, I had brought it up to Kathy Shields and said, was there any way to, cut down on this? And she said she was just glad I was getting the information. So,
So what I'm hearing
when I asked Kathy.
what I'm hearing is there's in some channels, too many emails.
The identical information.
Identical, yeah.
Identical information coming, but we had to read it because to make sure we weren't missing something.
We've got Lynn, Kasey, and Sheila Watson that'll be coming up. Thank you, Jan. Appreciate that.
Yes. So.
Okay, so we're going to go with Lynn Jones. Go ahead.
Good morning, everyone. One way that we can definitely communicate is through our phones. I know that we have a number associated with Skyward. However, we need to make sure that a number is available that everyone can be reached. Everyone does not respond to their Leon County Schools email in a timely manner. And maybe we should go with personal emails in order to communicate more effectively. Thank you.
All right. Yeah. Thank you for the suggestion. And we're going to go with Kasey.
Okay, I was just agreeing that if it were a text, like an emergency, a mass, kind of like when the kids are absent, if it's just one of those, the district that I worked in previously, that's how they would get in communication with us, would be just a text alert on our phones. And just because it's the summer, I thought the same thing. Emails, people just don't respond to those in the same fashion as if it was a text message or a phone call.
Right. And I think what's been discussed here was to set up a remind group just for teachers.
Mm-hmm.
That we would able to join that and receive information.
But not everybody's on Remind either.
So why not do a listserv, then go to a phone call, like an emergency phone call, check your work email. Like Rocky, check your work email, and then go to your email.
Well, that just seems like a lot of steps when you could just have the pre-recorded message sent to the phones. See what I'm saying?
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
Message is really long.
Oh, that's fair.
So I think these are all, let me start over. I don't think that there's a one size fits all answer. I think that we're going to have to think about how to do this, maybe in multiple channels. And I don't know if this is possible, but I almost wonder if in our teacher focus in Skyward, if we preferred method, and then we can use the phone. If there's like a radio button, if it's phone, then we call the person. If it's email. Like my preferred method is email, but not like. So I wonder if there's something we could do in this.
Collect.
Yeah, like in a like how we always we all have to go in for, maybe not this year, but there are years in the past where we have to go in for benefits. I wonder if there's something where we could do where we can say in Skyward, what is my preferred method of communication during an emergency?
Yeah, like
Perfect.
You do.
Yeah, and so that's some work we have to do behind the scenes, but we'll check that out, because I think I'm sorry, I don't know who spoke, but whoever the point is that I think the purpose of communication is to meet people where they are. So if some people like me check email all day, every day, email is my preferred method. But if Scott doesn't, and he checks the text, then proactively requiring him to join a remind group would be helpful.
Right.
If someone else prefers the phone, and I wonder if there's a way we can meet people where, my whole goal is to meet people where they are. But to the point of our other colleague, but not say the same thing 85 times and exhaust people with the same message. And so let's figure out if we can talk to IT about the Skyward question, because that would be really helpful.
That'd be great.
We can do that.
Yeah.
Okay, Sheila Watson, you were up next, and then we have Shari and then Sheria.
Good morning. I think that for me, as the front line to a parent who the parents in the classroom are looking to me for information, having the most updated information, but it being accurate across all areas. So as a pre-K ESE teacher, I'm receiving information from ESE, from my program specialist, and from my principal, but some of the information I'm receiving directly from ESE, my principal is not aware of. And so then when I go to question her to ask, she looks at me a little, confused. She's like, I haven't heard that, I'm not sure. So just making sure that all those lines are plugged in together. So whether it's the chain of command that what Kathy Shields and them send out from ESE also goes to the principal before we see it, or at the same time, so that they're on the same page.
And I think that's something we've talked about making sure that it flows through a central place, regardless of where the silo is, that it goes through some centralized piece so that the message is the same.
But I think I also heard that there was a lack of awareness. So I think what I heard was that, so ESC is sending out one thing, and then as a teacher, rightly so, you're checking with your principal to say, hey, your perception checking, is this what I'm supposed to be doing? Your principal's like, I don't know, I haven't seen it. So that's something that we definitely can improve on and work on, and I've taken that note. So yes.
Thank you.
Shari?
So to help with that, I know that LCTA does this. At the top of every email, it says who the emails went out to. This email went out to every rep. This email went out to every member. So that if I get an email, I can see, oh, my principal didn't get this. I need to share this with my principal. So that would help. So at the top of every email, there'd be some kind of note as to who got it.
Okay.
Same thing would go for texts and other things like that.
Sheria?
I just was going to echo what you said earlier. Basically, I think if we make certain that we have one central place where all the information is going to come from, that would encourage better communication. Because when you have different silos giving them all, it's just hard to follow. But if everything is coming from labor and relations, we all know that impacts our working conditions. And so they'll pay attention to that. All of that needs to be filtered through one central place. So when they have questions, they can go back and say, I can look at, this came from labor relations. You know what I mean? If I have any questions.
Yes, that's agreed. And
we're ideating over here. We're trying.
Yeah, I think that addresses the awareness part that you've also mentioned, Jillian, that everyone's going to be aware because it's coming from this one spot that things are taken care of.
So almost like we're kind of trying to brainstorm solutions as you guys are giving us this feedback. And so one of the things that Shane was saying, one of the things that Shane was saying is maybe what we could do is, and I'm like, if we go retreat home or at any catastrophe, God forbid, but like a hurricane, we live in Big Bend, a hurricane, that we have like a web page. We said a web page, but a one-stop shop, and like every communication we send it out to the audience, but every communication is dumped there so that at any point in time, people can go in and get that information. And so, and I wonder if we can send an alert, like, so one of the things, one of the things I got feedback on is, how we did the academic services, like things like this is appropriate length of time. Well, some people got it, some people didn't. So we could upload it there.
Yes.
And there, and then we can just say yes. Okay.
So everybody
We're
knows.
working on solutions. Okay. Maybe even a OneNote. right?
Scott, is there a way to get in line?
Something's been published.
Yes, the line is here with the hands going up, and I'm going to add you behind Brandi. So we've got Gina, we got Jan, Brandi, and then you, Brian, okay?
All right.
All right.
All right, next. Keep them coming. We're trying to solve problems, so keep them coming because this is really helpful for us.
Okay, Gina.
All right, thanks. I'm a fourth grade teacher at Hawks Rise, so I'm happy to be up right now because that's exactly what I was thinking. If there was a place where not only we're getting the information, but a place where we can go, because even though the communication was good to us for teachers, people did get different information, and then people gave that information to parents, and then parents went on Facebook, and then everybody got confused about everything because everybody's hearing things from different places. So it would be wonderful if there was a central place where if we see there's confusion or parents start asking us, we can just say, go to this place. This is going to have the most updated information.
As teachers on this, do you all feel very comfortable with OneNote?
No.
Okay.
Don't use it very much.
Thank you. That's all I needed. Perfect. Okay.
But that would be very helpful. Thanks.
Wonderful. And just on piggybacking on that, we did discuss in our small group meeting between Kim, Brandi, Sheria, Jillian, and Dina about prior notification of the staff before it gets to a public forum. So that staff isn't receiving the same information at the same exact time. And I think one of the suggestions was 8 a.m. it goes out to teachers, 10 a.m. is the press conference. And then that way, whether or not you email, you're at least aware of it. Okay, Jan, go ahead.
Thank you. This is Jan again, SLP. I wanted to add on to what the pre-K teacher was saying, that we do get different information from different sources. And I checked to see if my principal's gotten it. But I am regularly put in the position that I have to go tell my principal what she's supposed to be doing. And I am more loath to do that than anything on the planet. And I don't like to be responsible for making sure my principal understands what she's supposed to do, because if you're going to shoot the messenger, I prefer I'm not the messenger. So I feel like I'm caught, and I don't want to be. I want her to hear what she's supposed to hear from the people she's supposed to hear it from. And not be responsible for getting that to her and getting it right and all that. I don't think that's my responsibility to make sure my boss knows what she's supposed to be doing and I'm supposed to be doing for her. I wish she was told the information she's supposed to have. Thank you.
We're on to Brandi right now, and then we're going to go with Jennifer. Actually, Brandi. Brian, I think I may have skipped you here. Did I skip you, or were you after Brandi? I apologize.
After Brandi?
Okay, thank you. Thank you for helping me. All right, so Brandi.
Hey, Jillian. So as far as a centralized location, you mentioned OneNote, but I think a solution would be pretty simple. If we could set up and everybody's gonna say no, but let me finish my train of thought, Ryan, because I know I'm gonna get it with you. But everybody, if we would set up inside of Teams a folder that had access to every single teacher in the county, it would automatically go also to their email, and you could put a group link in the email so they could see it on the side, so it would copy it and log it permanently into the group. It would be in 3 centralized locations, so no matter what format the teachers wanted, they would be comfortable with using all 3 forms of the technology.
Got it. Yes, thank you. I think, right, perfect.
We're talking about communication.
Okay, Brian, you're up, and then Jennifer.
In reading over some of the larger scale plans, it's some of the other plans, the state and like CDC and NEA plans, to anticipate the need if only certain schools are going to be closed or certain schools might be addressed, or if Leon County Schools is going to do a total all or none type of response, to be able to anticipate that plans if only whatever, a subpopulation, how that would be communicated. That might need to be anticipated.
We're working on that, Brian. So what I think just what you're referencing is, like, for example, we've talked about this. So like, what if you have an outbreak at Childs High School, do we need to close Rickards? Do we need to close Lincoln? Or do we just close Childs for 2 to 5 days, which is what the state recommended yesterday or outlined yesterday? What is the plan for that? And so that is not my lane right now, but I do know that Dr. Cox and the principals and Scott Hansen and the superintendent are working on that. And I think that that's coming. But related to our conversation today is how do we communicate that? What if I'm at a school that closes and another school doesn't close? Those kinds of things.
Yeah, and just the last thing on that from what we saw is then anticipating challenges that families would have, or if teachers have their own children at schools that close, but their school is open. That is the secondary and tertiary effects of those.
Sure. I think also, but I think that as educators, we have a community to look to with practice, like in the Northeast when they days, you know how up north, it's not districts or cities, like it's like, anyway, I'm from up north. So there's cities and the districts are not as big as our districts, not by county. No. And so like one school district, which is across the street on the other side of the highway, is closed and the other one is open. And so I think we can look to other practitioners to see how they navigate some of that as we move forward. That's been my recommendation to that work group. So I'm sure they'll have an idea or a plan. Right, Ms. McAllister?
Yes, always. I'm present.
And Dina joined. You want to tell everybody that Dina's joined?
Yes.
Oh.
There you go.
Sorry. I'm here, present and accounted for. Don't know if I'm always clear, but hello, everybody.
Okay. And now we've got Jennifer Topper.
So I was kind of thinking about what was being said about having like a website to kind of be able to go to. And I know with LCTA, we have a specific sign-in that we use that the reps can go in and see that information. So it's not broadcast to the public. And that might be something that could already happen on the Leon County webpage, that maybe the teachers can go in. And then if a message was sent out, it could just be check the website. Instead of having everything bogged down in the email, you're going to one place to look for it.
That's really good feedback. I think from my perspective, I know one of the things that I wrestled with a lot of things in this 4 to 9 weeks, but one of the things I wrestled with was like, we wanted to push out information, let's say like guidelines on what is developmentally appropriate time on task, and just as a framework for practitioners. And then, but we didn't really want to push it out publicly, because what we didn't want was for a parent to say, and I'm making this up, that you said my first grader should only, developmentally appropriate is 20 minutes. I'm making it up. But your assignment, Ms. Gregory, was an hour. To give other people, I don't want to say ammunition, that's too strong of a word, but to give them something where they could lord it over people. And so that was one of the things I will tell you I really wrestled with, was that like I could go out and create a document, and I can go out and create, go find the research and put something together, and it can be polished and look nice. And so we sent it out through the principals, or I did, the principals, because we really didn't want it published forward facing, because I didn't want a parent to say, well, you, Ms. Greger, are not following what Mr. Seifert said we should be doing. And so these point about having it on a website, I think I received that, because that is something that I have really been navigating over the last 12 weeks now, and I think we have some solutions. I just have to work them out. And I heard Brandi say MS Teams and all that, but what I hear you say is place it someplace where you can go get it, and with some sort of navigation, some sort of prompt to go get it. And that's what I think, what I'm hearing universally, whether it's a text, an email, a website, whatever, is that there's this repository where the communication can go for teachers, for practitioners, that's maybe separate from others, that the prompt is, a phone call or whatever, but that you can go in when it's appropriate or convenient to get that information.
And it could be one of the ways that you self-select when you go ahead and pick, remind this. I don't want any of that stuff. I'll go find it myself, kind of thing, when it comes up.
Yeah,
so.
I can't promise on the self-select thing, but I'm going to work on it.
Right, I understand.
And I've seen the chat room. I'm on the chat box. I see in the chat room there's some questions really about management, like when schools are closing, what are we doing about outbreaks? We're closing all the whole district and siblings and things like that. that's really outside the scope of our conversation today. But what I will tell you is on Monday, we meet, and I will bring these questions up to leadership when we meet on Monday, just so that they know, that everyone knows we're all meeting
And you'll
today.
have a recording of this to show them.
Yes.
So, but in our leadership meeting, they don't. So I will bring these questions up in the chat that you are mentioning that are outside the scope of our conversation today, just so that you know, Dr. Cox and the superintendent hear them.
Okay. We've got Shelby and then we've got Sheila again. So Shelby, if you'd like to.
I think as a teacher, I was confused with what information it was okay to share with parents and what information it was just a courtesy, like you were giving us a heads up about. So I think it would be helpful to have sort of a tag that says like, you may share this with the public or families and students, and then other things that say like, just for teacher viewing. That way we know what we're able to direct parents towards and what we just need to wait on until the district announces.
Thank you. Did you see? I thought that was really helpful. Yes, thank you for that feedback. It's a really good idea, and we can operationalize that easily. And yesterday in the 146-page PowerPoint from DOE, they tagged their slides, and I thought that was actually really helpful. And so I think Ms. Walden and I were just talking about that. I think that's something we can absolutely implement. And so the idea being we could send it to you with a tag, you get it, you don't get it, you get it, you read it, you don't read it, whatever. But then the next piece is, right, because we want to guard it, we want you to know before we talk to the public, and we recognize that didn't happen as elegantly as we would have liked. And so I think that's really helpful.
Yeah.
Okay. Moving on to Sheila. And for those that are joining, if you want to participate or make a comment or suggestion, please raise your hand using that the function, and then or add it to the text communication. So Sheila, you're up.
Can you explain tags?
Well, I was just going to say, absolutely, Jillian, when you talked about having an area where we can go to and refer back to those. So as ESE, I think about in the way that we get on, I don't know if I'm actually correct, but when we go to OneDrive and we look back at all the documents that ESE has uploaded that we can refer back to, should we need them, or they're available for print, et cetera, our ESE checklists and whatnot for IEP meetings and funding strips, et cetera. And those obviously have to log in password protected. They're not available to the public, but they are things that I can refer back to as needed as sources of information. And so I don't know if that would be the easiest way, since everyone, and this is just my not knowing from not being at the district level, if everyone has OneDrive or not.
So ESE this is just my perception, that ESE has done a really nice job with implementing OneDrive to share files and folders. And so that is one of the things we talked about earlier a little bit, was maybe using OneDrive. Brandi mentioned MS Teams as an option. What we'll do is we'll take a look at all of that. You will give us homework. And so what we'll do is we'll look at MS Teams, we'll look at all these other pieces and parts, and we will kind of bring back to you an idea of how we can do this. Just nothing in stone, but really, like, we may find that doing something, I'm making this up, Pasco County created a air quote handbook that they put online, and they just dumped information in there, and it was behind your credentials. Get into it, you had to log in your credentials. And so that's kind of where I'm going. I call down there and ask them kind of the tools they did, but I think all of it gets to, and they posted it, and I think don't hold me to it, but I think it was OneNote in MS Teams. And so it kind of like, we put it in there, it checks, you put it in Teams, Teams sends the link to everybody via email and all these other ways. And then you click on that link and it takes you to help with like people who may be like less comfortable with Teams or less comfortable with OneNote. So in your inbox, in your email, you get this link, you click on the link and it takes you to where you are. And the only way you get the link is by logging into your inbox. So I'm working on it. I'm working on it, but this is really good feedback for me. And then Brandi, I think, asked about tagged slides. And so It's really not as fancy as it sounds, but essentially what they did is they coded every slide for the audience. And so on like there was a K-12 dot and a pre-K dot and a higher ed dot. And so if the slide had to do with pre-K, it was like a green dot. And so if as a pre-K, like I supervise also pre-K in our district. So I know I'm not going to pay attention to the orange dots, which are higher ed. Like certainly if I have time to read them, I will, but I'm really going to focus on the pre-K dot, the green dots. And so I think I don't know why, I don't know. I feel stupid not having not thought of that, but that was a really, yesterday when I was sitting as an audience member getting this information from the commissioner, I was like, oh, this is, because it is overwhelming. It's 146 slides and some of it has to do with finance. I get, of course I care about finance, but whatever, it's not my task. Yeah. My task is these other things. So finding my dots was really helpful.
You could do pre-K, elementary.
ESC, like I could, yes. And so this is, I think that, yeah, because there's a volume of work that we are undertaking. And so on this call, for example, McLean, it may be really something that has to do with EOCs. And so for Mr. McLean, who may teach biology, that EOC information, if we tag it EOC information, that way your speech pathologist, if they want to read it because they have a kid in EOC class, they can, but really it's not part of their work function. So we'll get there. We'll do better. But that's kind of what we were thinking, Brand. When I say tag slides, I think that's what I was thinking. That's where I was going, Brandi.
Okay, so Katie is up next. Katie?
Yeah, I was just piggybacking on how to share the information. And with the ESE platform, we also have it on our class links to go straight to the forms. So it could be something that everybody could go to class links, and there's for the teachers, or there's for different groups, and let the principals also have that accessibility for information that like ESE stuff, so that they can go and look at any time and see what's going on with that. That was just my feedback of trying.
Yeah, I think they're already talking about it right now.
Yes, we're trying to get solutions. Yes. But yes, I think you make a good point, Katie, about the principal also having their thing.
And so for your tags and everything, it might be a good idea of figuring out what are all the possible tags within Leon County School. Like there's designation of who's ESE, who's secondary, who's elementary.
Like an org chart?
Yeah, like an org chart. Like who are school psychologists, all that kind of stuff.
So I don't know. I mean, realistically, I don't know that we'll be able to do that in the next 40 days,
Right. No.
But I think that this is over time we
picture.
can get to like big, but I think that there are certain groups that we get bang for our buck, like teachers, ESE, pre-K, those kinds of elementary, so we will work on all that.
But even when we teachers as instructional staff, there's like teacher resource where it may not necessarily apply to someone that's in more of a classroom setting, or like a dean that would be still under instructional, but isn't dealing with some of the same stuff.
Sue's on it.
Sue Shoemaker.
Yeah. Oh.
She said she can't raise her hand.
She can. She's got it. Now, Sue, you're up.
Hi. I just asked whatever platform is used, that a couple things happened that I know frustrated me because of communication. One specifically ESE, and I know we're voicing a lot of things, but we have extra, we're very extra, so we're going to be extra. That we got some last minute stuff like, oh, this has to be done today. For example, locking distance learning plans. This has to be done today. And when, everybody's got different numbers of students they're responsible for, and sometimes that's a little unrealistic. So timely disbursement of information, especially required tasks, give us, a realistic window to get things done. And also making sure that everybody gets the information at the same time. I think a lot of stuff was passed out through the principals, and some principals were quicker to get the information out than others. So I'm definitely for whatever you choose. I'm not real tech savvy, so I'm not recommending whatever platform or whatever you use, but whatever is chosen, that it go directly to the people that are affected and not expecting it to get filtered through a leader, such as a principal or a program specialist or, you know, whatever, that it go through the people that need it.
Yes,
Okay.
ma'am.
At the same time, because I would, you know, that's it.
I think one big question, Dr. Shoemaker, I appreciate your feedback. Like, we will absolutely work on that, and we recognize that some of our principals are like Johnny on the spot on emails, and some of our principals are less like that. And so the distribution of communication was uneven, I think is the best way to characterize that. I think one of the things we need to talk, not for you, but we'll talk about is who is responsible for that? Like, does it go through labor relations and you have support? Does it go through TIS because they have access? Like, who is the person that, you know, because we generate documents, but then who do we, you know, like I'm sending it, you know, but then sometimes the principals say they get too many emails, things get lost in their emails, so we're not allowed to send emails. And so we just need to figure that out internally.
Right.
So you guys, I don't think you don't care about that. Like us figuring out who the owner is.
No, the owner part's not, I think
We'd like to
receiving.
have one. I know that what we've talked about in the past, and some of the teachers would like to have one source. It's come from one source.
Right, but you don't care where that source is. Okay,
No,
so we just need,
But
so whether it's DINA or TIS.
But I do think that even though if it's one source that's doing the distribution, that because it could impact working conditions, it should go through labor relations for review to make sure that it meets what is agreed upon by both parties.
Yes, we do that.
Exactly.
Routing.
Before it gets that right. And then we've got Jan, who is next. Go ahead, Jan Roberts.
Hey, thank you. And again, I'm an SLP. I just wanted again to jump on what the pre-K teacher was saying, that of course during this last 9 weeks, things were exacerbated, like being told you need to do this now or you need to do this in an hour. But when you multiply that by our caseload, the thing they're asking for itself might not be difficult, but doing 60 or more of them and having it done in an hour is. But that is not just something that happened over COVID. That is a routine thing that comes, not routine, but it regularly happens every year that we are asked to do things immediately with a very apologetic email that comes with it, and they're sorry and they appreciate us more than anything on the planet, but I need this in an hour, apologize. And it'll be the same thing that's asked year after year to do the stuff, and it's common for us to be asked immediately to stop, drop, and do something with our caseloads, and it's due now. Yeah, so I just want to say that's not just a COVID issue. Thank you.
What's the reason?
We received that. Thank you. And Ms. McAllister and I looked at each other, and when we talked to at leadership on Monday, as I mentioned, we will bring this up to Dr. Cox's feedback. So I'll be happy to have that conversation. I can't promise that it'll change. It's not in my channel, but I will make sure that your frustration and your point is noted, and I will share that. And I'm sorry.
We can do a Friday for ESE.
I can't promise.
Okay.
Like
he'll come.
Right. So I'm saying,
Understood.
like, I don't supervise.
We can do the
I'm not
invite.
big
We can see what
boss.
happens.
So, but I'm here.
Seeing that Katie's hand is up, go ahead and keep making comments in the comment section.
Yes, I just wanted to kind of clarify. I know that we're in the process of trying to meet with the ESE, and I know there's been a lot of questions, and we have survey information that we would love to share to try to go over those issues. And I know that as soon as someone has a time to do that, to get it all set up, that we will. But I do want to make sure that that is something that I know that we are both trying to collaborate and get that together with ESE and getting that worked out.
So what I'm going to do is, on the ESE issue, I've heard 3 or 4 of you, and what I will do is talk to Dr. Cox on Monday and circle back with him. And it may be my face you see consistently, but know that your concerns, I will share them. The scope of today is communication. I certainly recognize that that is part of the communication, but as we kind of pivot to what work we want to undertake today and honoring our time, we've heard some of the concerns. Is there any topic within the communication area related to us disseminating that you can feedback that we haven't talked about that we really need to make sure we talk about?
Well, I had one more question with that. With communication, and I might have missed this because I kind of came in late, is that the communication about the safety when it's going out before the school year starts, the protocols, that might be something that needs to have input from the teachers. Like, that's what I would like where you guys are thinking and what, the communication of how that's getting out with the safety protocols and the cleaning protocols.
Okay, so can I ask a clarifying question? Your safety, where my mind goes, just because of my background, is like shoot 'em up safety issues. You're really talking about the health and hygiene protocols. We're talking about really coronavirus.
Yes, the main thing is the coronavirus, but also when looking at the different protocols when it comes to security, like when we have lockdowns and we have lock-ins and lockouts, how does that look when we're supposed to go in a closet and we have to do distancing? And how does that, all those different factors go into play if we are at brick and mortar?
So that's a really good question, and I will speak to Dr. Cox and to John Hunkyar. I think really what your question is, I think I heard it, or is that if, when we are required to practice the first 10 days of school, when we're required to practice hurricane drill within the first 45 days, we're required to practice active shooter situation in our schools. How do we do that in the era of coronavirus?
Yes.
And how do we do that in a way that is reflective of what the guidelines from the CDC are, or your comfort level? And so again, Ms. McAllister and I will share that. I will say, I don't think it's not public. We're talking about, right? So we are doing work. So as you may know, some of you, that we in academic services have been soliciting feedback probably for about 5 weeks now. We've been holding focus groups, holding internal and external focus groups. We're using all of that information and using conversations like this to kind of drive how we frame 2021. But we have a task force that we are required to report to. So I don't know that this stuff will be on that task force conversation, but that task force isn't until the end of June. And then on June 30th, we have a school board meeting where the task force, I'm not in charge of it or anything, is presenting their ideas for consideration for us. Mm-hmm. And then I think the first week of July is when the plans will be pushed out about what all the different things that we're doing related to health and safety and all that kind of stuff. And so, but I will ask, I think Dr. Cox is holding work groups this week coming up.
But my question on that is, if those work groups, are there teachers in it?
In his? I don't know.
No.
In mine, yes.
I know yours. Yes, thank you.
But I will check with him. I'll check with him. I don't know.
And if not, is there a way that we can request to have some teachers on that? Because that would, I think, would benefit. And that's it. Thank you.
Yes, Ms. Fritz. I will. We're having a sidebar with Ms. McCall because I'll ask her.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I can ask
Okay.
her.
Right now we've got Brian, who was in queue, and then I saw Shari's hand up, so we'll go that route. And just before we do that, though, I know that there's been a lot of coordination. And
hello, Mr. Kelly. How are you?
Making sure that everybody all the.
I'm doing fantastic. I'm currently on a Zoom call, and I want to pick up for you, but can I call you when I'm done? Oh.
There we go.
I know.
But that there's been a very conscious effort to put teachers on the groups, in the work groups and everything. That's greatly appreciated. So I just, I know that we're not sure where that one is, and I know we're going to talk, but anyway, in the other ones, it's happening, and we appreciate all that. So Brian, your turn, and then we'll go with Shari.
So on the communication, you seems like you have a good handle on the dissemination, but especially the last 2 or 3 people and the last 2 or 3 comments. How can teachers send you responses, or when teachers have questions? some sort of ladder that says, well, what is being held by the principal? What, if it's a program thing, does it go to the program specialist? If it is an LCTA concern, I know one of the things LCTA gets overwhelmed with is it's things that really they just bounce back to the school or go straight to the district, and that maybe slows down some issues. And then for your communication, whatever program you decide to go with or process, some sort of evaluation that it's actually working. That is just putting out the information does not mean that it's being received. That's it.
What was the last part?
The last part was kind of like a, confirmation of receipt of something, or to show that people are getting the information that read receipt, that I've got it. If that's
I would
so, you have,
not do a read receipt.
no, I'm not saying that. But if you sent out to 2,200 teachers, and there was a way for a response that that on whatever platform it was opened on at least 1,600.
It's almost like a help. So I think I heard two things, Mr. McLean. I think the first one is, well, okay, so let me get back up for a second. So there were moments in time during the last 9 weeks where it became abundantly clear that we needed to do something to resolve an issue, or to do something with related to, some activity. Because just so you know, like all of us, just as a matter of practice, my inbox, like true story, my email inbox would blow up with like 10 emails from around one issue, right? Mm-hmm. So one example that kind of emerged was the lack of live instruction, right? So all of a sudden, over the period of like 10 days, I would get 6 or 8 emails from people, and 6 or 8 out of 32,000 is not a big number, but when you think about like people actually reaching out, that kind of emerged, right? Like qualitatively. But what you're saying, Mr. McLean, what I'm hearing you say is really, what is a process we can outline that provides for a mechanism for that feedback? So we're not relying on like the Spidey sense method, which is like, oh, I'm getting all these emails, there must be a problem. But really, what is a process that we can put in place? And so where my mind went to was something like in TIS, we do help tickets.
Yeah.
And so something like that. I don't know that I'm going to have it ready by August, but something where we can provide a circular, an opportunity for feedback, knowing that our district informational model really is school district, central office, school, and others. But is there a way we can close the feedback loop? So Miss Walden has an amazing mind for processes. So she is going, I know she's already thinking of something. So
My favorite word is protocol.
Yeah, so we're on it. You raise a good point. What is a systemic way we can achieve that?
And now we're to Shari.
All right, 3 quick things. One, can we, if possible, get the agenda topics ahead of time, at least a meeting ahead of time if possible, like it was about communication this time, so that, not that we're having any trouble giving you any ideas, but some of the topics may be more challenging than other, and the more that we can think about it ahead of time to formulate our ideas, the better. Second of all, I'm hoping that one of the topics will be technology specific, and what I'm talking about there is the technology that the families are going to be receiving, the students are going to be receiving. And with that, I would say that we have an opportunity as we hand out that technology to put in place the communication platforms that we want parents to use. So if when they turn the computer on or the device on, if it automatically goes to Leon County Schools, let's say, instead of their school website, or however you want to do it. I'm not that tech savvy, so I don't know. So that certain things will automatically pop up for families when they turn on their computers. That we have that opportunity before we put the technology in their hands to do something with it. Thank you.
Got it. On it.
There are no more hands up, but I mean, along the lines of what Brian was saying with feedback, just saying, is there a way that we can, you go back, kind of process what is possible, and then during maybe one of the meetings in the beginning part, it's just more of a debrief or a feedback loop of where you said, well, we took everything in consideration. This is kind of what we think we can do. And then maybe even an opportunity for folks to try it in the group to get feedback of how effective it was, or like run some trial runs with a subgroup. Just a thought, and then the PD that would go along with it when what you were thinking when you finally said, this is how we're going to do it.
So with all of that said, I just want to make sure everyone I think there are more than 30 people now, but I just want to make sure that everyone who has something had the opportunity to share. I think sharing is really important.
So comments, raised hands.
I've been reading the comments. And so I don't see any questions, just some comments.
Okay.
All right, so you've given us really good feedback, and so we got some, and I just want to circle back, and so we're going to talk about improving our the process for disseminating information and what that could look like using the technology that we have available. At the same time, developing a feedback loop for how things are going. One of the things that we did, we really have well before the task force ever came into being, academic services under the leadership of Shane and Mr. Seifert and Ms. Marsh have been holding focus groups. And so we've held something like 12 teacher focus groups, excluding an LCTA specific focus group. And so if you feel that you want to share your perspective, we're not really running focus groups right now in terms of gathering data, but what we are doing is holding interviews. And so we call them one-on-one interviews. And so if you would like to share it more privately, or a specific experience you have, we certainly want you to have a sense that your voice is heard, and we can facilitate that interview for you, either through Mr. Seifert or Ms. Marsh, again, because your perspectives are really important to us. So with that said, we are going to, I'm just reading too. So we are going to take your feedback on communication and develop something and bring it back to you. That we have a lot of ideas kind of percolating. There are a lot of different ways we can do some things, MS Teams, all of these things. So, but the point of it is not to make it messier, but to make it cleaner and more methodical. And I think that's the word I would take away, is making the communication loop more methodical and process driven. And we can get there. I'm confident of that. Mr. Mason, did you want to add anything about communication? Is there any?
No, that's been wonderful. Yeah.
Okay.
I think that the next piece for us is just to trying to determine what are the agendas for the following Fridays, and maybe getting some feedback from folks of what they might like to see, but also you could start with where you think we need to go if you'd like, and that might check off a number of them.
Do you mind if I do that?
Yeah, go ahead.
So I don't know if you've heard, we're going 1-to-1 in our district. And so I think what we'd like to do is spend some time with you talking about what 1-to-1 is. And at the same time, talk about kind of next steps with that. I think the board has already approved the purchase of the 1-to-1, the devices.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I think last board meeting they already purchased. I'm like, TIS is handling that. And TIS is no longer so organizationally, TIS does not report to me anymore. They report to finance, Kim Banks. So I'm looking at my colleagues because I'm thinking, I'm not intimately involved with this process. So the devices I think are on order. I think the goal is that they should be in on August 1st or thereabouts. And that there's a whole process involved with something called white glove service that I'd like to kind of go through with you guys, and then talk about the different tools that are gonna be on the device. I think that might be a really good step next. And then just so you know what the landscape is, and then, because this is our jam, we have, under the leadership of Mr. Seifert and Ms. Walden, who are amazing, developed an outstanding, we've developed a lot of professional development, and our goal is to push out PD in like short chunks, mini PD that are going to be done virtually, that orient to all of the pieces and parts. Some of it is device and content agnostic, like how to motivate students online, right? That's one of the things that was really abundantly clear that we needed to support. How do I organize my day online? And we're going to do teacher PD, admin PD, student PD, and parent PD. For parents, how do I communicate with my child's teacher? How do I do these other, all the pieces and parts of like the way of work of teaching online? Should we go in pandemic? In addition, as you may be aware, a survey went out last week from Dr. Gale, and trying to get a sense of through school choice, parents who may not be returning their students to school with us in a traditional sense. And so that is just an interest survey. There will be work done the first and second week of July confirming intent. And so we can talk about that. I do believe Dina's not here. She had to step out, but I do believe there's some work with teachers on what teachers may be who would prefer to do online learning. So all of that. So we're working on all that. So I think our next step, would be to kind of give you a landscape of the device. Shari's hands up. On the device and the different pieces and parts of the device, and then move into the professional development piece.
Okay, Shari?
This kind of goes with communication, but as you think about technology, the younger the student, the greater the parent involvement in the use of technology. And as a first grade and kindergarten teacher, my experience in this last part of school was that there were many parents that were not tech savvy at all. And so they gave up. And I'm just not going to do it. Just send me the paper. I can't do it. I can't navigate it. So the older the student, the more tech savvy they are. You know, if I have a younger person with me and I can't do something, I often will hand them my phone or my technology and say, fix this for me. But a 6-year-old cannot do that if their parent is also not tech savvy. So that is a challenge that you guys are going to have to consider. And the PD should be, some of it should be projected directly at those parents of younger children.
Yeah, so one of the things we're doing is we're developing PD by that's developmentally appropriate by age of student and the parent, right? And so we know, and like Shari, you and I have talked about this, right? That, you know, our K2 students, our primary students have a fundamentally different attention span, skill set, and ability to engage in content than their intermediate peers, and certainly other students. And so we are actually, that's part of our plan to really target that. You know, when we're talking about one-to-one, and, you know, and Shari and I talked about philosophies regarding early education, I'm not sure it's particularly appropriate that we spend a lot of time putting kids on computers and, you know, right? Like that's not how, what we know it changes the wiring in the brain and all of these other kinds of things. And so, you know, so we're one-to-one K-12. I think how one-to-one is implemented K2 will be probably different than 3-5, will be different than 6-12 or 6-8, right? And so that part of it, we're gonna have to really work through. I think that to be completely transparent, I don't know how elegant it's going to be at first, because in general, school districts take about 18 months to launch this, and we're doing it in about 60 days. And so we're just gonna be providing just-in-time basic training. And then there are gonna be some decision points that have to be made. And, you know, like one of the things that we've talked about, just so you know, but no decision's been made and we'll solicit input, is like homework, right? What, particularly elementary, particularly with one-to-one. So if devices don't go home at elementary school, and I'm not saying that decision's been made, but let's say K2, devices don't go home. They stay in the classroom. Well, K2, generally homework is a packet that goes home in a folder, and it stays at home for a week, a month, 2 weeks, whatever the interval is, and gets returned to the teacher for evaluation. That's different than 4th and 5th grade, when homework is generally tied to whatever was done in the classroom as an extension of learning in the classroom on that day. And so 3rd grade is kind of, so we have to talk about all of this and how all of this works with technology and that way of work. And that's what we need to get to maybe 2 weeks from now. Shari's hands up.
Just as a follow-up to make sure, and I know some principals have removed it from, but to re-implement computer lab media into the wheel, so that that time can be utilized for teaching the younger children how to use their technology and how to be appropriate with those one-to-one pieces of equipment. If I take away from my reading block in order to teach everybody how to turn the computer on and where to go. And so I want, when we start with reading, I want them to already know what they're supposed to do, if that's possible.
I think, and we're looking at, your colleagues at LCTA earlier really asked us to consider developing an instructional framework for the first 2 weeks of school that pushed back historically. For those of you at secondary, you may be less familiar with this, but at the elementary level, generally the first couple of weeks are really baseline testing and placement testing and various supplemental programs. And so we're really looking at pushing some of that back. So the first couple of weeks of school, giving lessons for teachers to use on orienting developmentally appropriate lessons to orient students to technology, both to the device, wireless, all that kind of stuff, and then also whatever content is on the device. And so we are working on that and rolling that out as well. The feedback we got universally positive was that teachers felt very appreciative of the 2 weeks that we kind of built into the phase 1 and phase 2 to give everyone time to get their them. And some people didn't need the whole 2 weeks. Some people took the whole 2 weeks, but really to give that time for comfort and familiarity with transitioning to a distance learning environment, K-12 district-wide. And so we're going to try and take that good feedback we got and implement it in a similar way the first couple of weeks of school this year, going back face-to-face, so that we can try to help support that so teachers can feel comfortable and all of those kinds of things. Don't overestimate the ability of high school principals. Got it, Mr. McLean.
And I think that's where the centralized message is going to be very helpful.
Yes.
And then the help desk or whatever that is for clarification of interpretation of what that means.
Yes.
So. Okay, so
got it. Yeah. And we're talking about that, especially we're talking about also the first 9 weeks of school, developing kind of like a help desk phone number that for teachers to call out to academic services as a support for the teachers. I was looking at Ms. Walden because she and I talked about that too.
Okay, so I think we've had our meeting. I don't know if you guys want to meet any longer. If you have any more suggestions on this particular topic, I do see that Sandra's hand is up, but we'll let her get in and then we'll figure out what our topic is for next time. And here we go, Sandra.
I'm hearing a lot of people and reading in the chat room, a lot of people saying they're going to take the first week of school to teach the kids technology. One thing that I have noticed as having a master's in technology that I found sorely missing with our students is there needs to be a use of technology starting in the earlier grades. And I'll give you an example. If you took how to type and Word in 3rd grade, in 4th grade, do presentation. They've already had typing, they've already had Word, they're building on it with presentation, which would lead into research and coordinate with the 4th grade writing skills. 5th grade, what they need to do is Excel. Excel teaches math. With math, you can incorporate science. 6th grade, then you can start doing some of the basic ICT courses. You can have coding, Scratch, some of the other things that builds those technology skills. 7th and 8th grade, you can go ahead and focus in on some of the more advanced ICT, and then leading up to the high school versions of the technology certifications. When it came to my 7th and 8th graders that did not take technology from me, they didn't even know they had an email account. They didn't know how to access their OneDrive. And so I spent the first week giving private lessons to students over and over. I know a lot of them spent 16 to 18 hours a day getting each one of those kids into Teams. How you do this. Don't forget that this button does that. How to use Draw. How to write on their phone so they could do their answers. How to submit their lessons. And this is a recurring problem that I throughout the district. And it just seems that in this day and age, there needs to be a set technology program that utilizes all of the office products that we have access to.
That's really good feedback, Ms. Mader, and we're taking it down. And we'll get on to your point. We'll really talk to our developers about opportunities for infusing technology in the pacing guide. And so one of the things that I've been working on, and so I'm going to say something and it's draft, so please don't be like, Jillian said we're doing this, okay? But so we know that nothing replaces face-to-face instruction. And so for the 4th 9 weeks of last school year, there are standards that are part of our pacing that were not covered in a deep way or in a way as they would have been face-to-face. There were assignments given, maybe some students did them, some students didn't. So what we've in curriculum services to do in our academic services is take the standards from the 4th 9 weeks and map them to standards in the next grade level's 9 weeks. So where they throughout the year, so wherever they appear. So for example, I'm making this up, if LA 123 was a 4th 9 week standard that was not covered deeply, mapping it to LA 2.1.3 in the 2nd grade standards. So that when a teacher's looking at the pacing guide, they can say, oh, the black standard is the standard that is in black is my standard. The standard that is in blue is the standard that was not covered deeply. Ms. Mader, to your point, I think what we could do is at certain intervals, what we could overlay on that is, maybe on the weekend or on the note, like this would be a good place to, a technology prompt, like, this is a good place to put an Excel activity. This is a good place to, because all of our stuff are suggestions, it's not requirements. And maybe that's a really good place where we can centralize that piece, that message. I think that's something we could absolutely do. Considering how quickly.
And Jennifer has her hand up when you're done with the comment.
So middle school and high school needs none. Okay, so the student. So as we kind of get into technology, I don't have a demonstration yet for you. We don't have the Chromebooks in yet.
No, we don't.
So the students are getting Chromebooks, and I'm not the most tech savvy person, so I'll ask Mr. Williamson to come next week and maybe explain them to everybody. And then I think that it'll be something that, it's going to be super user friendly for students. I'm hemming and hawing because I think what we'll do, Mr. McLean, is that not every subject does the same thing, but and I'm making this up, but if we run a homeroom in the morning, for the first 2 weeks of school, that homeroom, the first week will be device management and all those kinds of things at the secondary level. At the elementary level, it's a different animal, but at the secondary level, so it's not that necessarily you will carve out part of your instruction to get into, to do the orientation to the device. It'll be part of a homeroom model. But I think we'll have more, that's still a germ, a seed. That hasn't really been done anything. We haven't done too much with that. Am I hearing anything about, consider how quickly transfer stool, will they be counted? Yeah, so the devices are going to be inventoried using a process similar to Destiny, which means nothing. So, which it's going to be barcoded and things like that. So it's going to go with the student. We'll do some transferring, and it should be good. That should be resolved. It would not be I do not believe the expectation of any teacher to manage these devices or worry about that. It's really going to be housed administratively. I was asked, are you hearing anything about testing? Will we have more time to teach, not teach? Well, Miss Gawadra, we live in Florida.
And Jennifer's in the queue here,
Okay.
so
Got it. Mr. Wagelmuth, yes, I understand that every school has a homeroom, but I think we're talking about doing something in August to allow for that. I'm not sure where we landed, but I think that that we're working towards something where instruction is not diminished significantly to distribute devices, those kinds of things. create base every, can I, blah, blah, can I IT, wait,
Whoa, we
testing,
changed topics.
Ms. Squancher, I was kind of snarky, but we
We're
don't
doing
have any
next time.
information about
We kind
testing
of got
yet.
through the communication.
And so as soon as we get information, we'll share it. What I can say is that the state has said that in the summer, if we want to administer EOCs to students, we can. We've really explored this. We don't think we can do it in a way that adheres to CDC and scientifically based guidelines. And so as a district, we're not administering testing during the summer. We'll pick it back up in the fall. Are we getting, okay, wait, great technology, okay, create basic flow chart, can IT create access to class link? Yeah, we are gonna be providing lots of training and access and all that kind of stuff. And then someone said, are we talking about what our topic for next week now? Yes, we are talking about our topic for next week. So I will, we will get, and you have like the people, so I'm not an expert in technology, but I will have Mr. Williamson here. And do we have a focus group? Wait, do we have a focus group to discuss technology implementation? Yes, you. So we're going to be talking to you guys. It's really whoever. I mean, honestly, I would hope that through working together, you all, some of you know me, some of you don't, but you always know that you can always email or call me with anything. We have not established in academic services a technology focus group. Technology doesn't report to me, it reports to TIS. TIS is Kim Banks. But I will talk to Mr. Williamson about it. He's our project lead for the whole district and see about that. But I will share what I know, and I will bring Mr. Williamson to one of our meetings and all that kind of stuff and share it with you, and you can give us feedback. But I don't know systemically how that works. Our Title I, our teachers getting new laptops. Some teachers at Title I schools don't have access to fundraisers, and so we are working on that. So earlier in the chat, I saw somebody say teachers and students getting Chromebooks. It is my understanding that teachers are not getting Chromebooks. Teachers are getting laptops. Chromebooks are very limited devices. They are web-based. And they are unlocked. So like students are not going to be able to download Netflix. They're not going to be able to download many different things, because every time the student interacts with the internet through a Chromebook, they are going through our network. So even if they're home, the only way they can access the content is through our network. So the Chromebooks allow us to have a much higher level of security than many other devices. And that's why, generally speaking, they've been used in many districts around the state of Florida and around the nation. With that said, we would not necessarily expect our teachers to use the Chromebooks because you're doing things that are slightly more robust than students. And so that's what we had a sidebar over here. It's my understanding that teachers are getting laptops, and I confirm that we do have that sense. And so I hate to hem and haw, but let's put a pin in that. But I think the idea is that students are getting Chromebooks, teachers are getting a laptop, and it's different. They power differently because the expectation is the uses are different.
Yeah, and they operate differently because the right click is like a 2-finger tap on a Chromebook. I mean, we got some at home, so it's going to be a learning curve for teachers, because their device isn't going to match the student's device and how it operates. So when a kid needs help, you're gonna have to know how it works.
Mr. Wagamuth, if I can make no EOCs forever, I would. Could we yes.
Yeah.
Technology special area to deepen the tech skills. A technology special area, like in at elementary. I hate to say this, but that is really I would encourage you to have a conversation with your principal, because both the principal and work on what is going to be on your campuses. Those courses exist, but every principal decides.
And I'll ask that question later. I don't know. Is there a way like the school board could institute a policy that would make it, because we're going to one-to-one anyway, that would kind of.
I don't think you want to do a policy, but I think
whatever, or direction of the superintendent.
I think we would I think you're going to find in practice that principals are going to be very keen to do something like this because they want it to be successful, right? And so I think it would surprise me if they didn't do something. Now, with that said, I don't know that you need to have I don't know at the elementary level how they're going to do, because some schools already have this is why I'm hemming and hawing. Some elementary schools have technology, some have computers, some schools use media for computers, some schools have, I mean, like, we're all over the place, right? And so I recognize that. So can we keep our old laptop if we want to? I think so. I'm keeping my Surface, so yes. What are we going to do? Okay. What are we going to increase bandwidth to handle the increased usage? Because I sit in meetings all day, every day. It is my understanding that our bandwidth has the capacity to handle the additional load. What we are doing right now in TIS specifically is working with the principals is identifying dead zones on campuses, because even though we have like on paper, I can look and say, yes, you know, and I'm making this up, we have 100 something and we are only using 4 or something, so we have the bandwidth for it. What I do know is that even that there are lots of places that the internet doesn't work well on campuses, like, and it feels like certain facility structures, like the Springwood, Buckley, Canopy Oak structure, whatever they built with when they built those schools, I can't even, but
Clay and iron.
yes. So I think the principals are working this week with TIS on those tasks. I joined, hold on a second. There's a lot of chatter. Okay. Can we create technologies? Okay, we talked about that. I agree. I joined late. Did they cancel? No, Miss Patel, they have not canceled EOCs for the upcoming year. In fact, they're allowing for EOCs to be administered more frequently. I think for students, September, December, and then in the spring and the summer. But we are the summer one. Can we keep our old laptop, Ms. Cabrera? You may. I think so. You may want to get a re-image with Mr. Lubitz, but check with them. What are we going? We did that one. We should use the kids are using. Will veteran teachers be given the opportunity to transfer? I don't know. That's not my area. But I will get somebody to get with you. Ms. McAllister's having a sidebar.
I'm sorry, what?
Go ahead. Will veteran teachers, are they going to have transfer day?
No.
Okay.
Not that way. Not in the way they think they are.
Traditional.
No.
Okay.
Just flat out. Yeah. No. Because I'm not going to have teachers.
Yeah. So Ms. Taylor, I think the question was, do some schools teachers have laptops and some schools teachers do not have laptops? And so I think TIS is working on inventorying that right now and identifying gaps and then meeting those gaps. So that's what I think I know today. It does. Are we going to be using Canvas, and are we still going to be able to use Zoom for class meetings? Are we going to be using Canvas? Probably. It has not been decided by the board yet, although I do believe a board item is going in the next week or the following one. And if it is Canvas, we'll let you know. I mean, we're moving forward with a recommendation to the board for Canvas. We already have it in our district. So rather than doing everything new, but we're waiting to find out from the board. And then does Zoom integrate with Canvas? Yes, the Zoom integrates with Canvas, as does MS Teams. And so the reason why we would use that is because it integrates with everything that we have already. Sorry for the repeat questions. I didn't know I was going to, question is, just to consider, what options will there be in the classroom for secondary students to charge their computers? Okay, so we're diving deep into next Friday's conversation, but this is what I think I understand. The device has a 12-hour battery life that but we know children, and we know that they're not going to charge at home. And so there are going to be some sort of, I don't want to call it, it's not a cart, but a device station in a classroom where students can go in and things. Point of view, it's going to be a little bit of they charge on. So the kid, this device comes with a charging thing, and so what is that? So like if I'm teaching and I'm planning on them using the device, and then Maddie Gregory and she doesn't charge her device, which is going to happen, then what do we do with that? And how what does that look like? And are we all running cords all over our classrooms and all that? That I don't know. I don't have a clean answer for that, but that's something that I am fully aware of.
And on that point, just real quick, because there was a laptop cart with one-to-one with iPads for security purposes, the locking, all that kind of stuff, it does become an issue on if you're the teacher of record that it's been checked out to and it's supposed to stay there and how that all works.
It's not checked out to teachers.
But if I thought that I heard that the K-5 were not taking the devices
it's
home.
still going to be matched to the student.
Right, but if they leave it at school and then it goes gone, then who's responsible for it? If it goes gone, the student's still
So, like-
responsible. So that's
Like
just
if the
something to
classroom gets
consider.
broken into?
It's just something to consider. No, I'm just saying after school programs sometimes come into buildings. Things happen where people are coming in and out. You know, we would like to think that every door is secured and locked and no one comes into the room, but you know, just a for consideration.
Mr. McLean, I'm writing down your note. I know we've talked a lot about student connectivity, but I don't think we've talked about teacher connectivity. And I do know we do have some teachers who have limited connectivity at home.
And we worked on that with Kim Banks and there's some people who just live in areas where CenturyLink. So, and hotspots, it's hard, it's difficult to do the hotspot because hotspots bandwidth is so, and when they're further out, but we're working on that too.
Oh my gosh, my typing's terrible. Thank you. Anyway, so thank you, Mr.
It's all good. And Jennifer's in the queue, and I don't know if Jennifer, you still have anything
Got it,
that
Ms.
you want to
Galanter.
kind of add? Go ahead.
Well, I know one of the biggest struggles that my second graders had, and I'll say, don't count out the lower elementary schools for technology, because my kids actually did really well given what they were doing. But one of the biggest struggles they had was the amount of apps that were in their class links. I mean, I looked at it and they had at least 40 different things that they could click on, and the majority of which we didn't use. So I ended up going into each of my students and cleaning it up so they just saw what we were using. And I just wonder if there's a way that as teachers we could go in and at least put in an admin code to delete the thing, because I went in and even tried to delete it and couldn't get rid of them.
So that is really good feedback. So without opening up Pandora's box, if as we recommend Canvas as an expansion as the LMS, and if the board approves it, which I think they will, but if they approve it, they have to put all that in there. Canvas is the one-stop shop where things go in. Mm-hmm. And so the idea, because your feedback, Ms. Topper, is consistent with the feedback universally. We've heard from teachers, we've heard from parents, we've heard from students, that, because we did student focus groups too, that having 85 different apps with 85 different things was really, really difficult to manage. And so our goal is we're going to use an LMS on the device, and the LMS has content, we'll get content loaded in it. And then what we would probably have to do, and this is not for today, is figure out like the supplement, if we go pandemic and everyone's home, what is the supplemental program we want to use? So for example, some schools are using Myon, some schools are using iReady, some schools are using AR, some schools are using all three, some schools are using Lexia, so that means all four, right? And to your point, and so we're gonna have to say, like, we can do those things face-to-face all day, every day, because as teachers, you guys manage it, and you know when you're going in, and you built it in small groups, it's computer lab, all that kind of stuff. But on the family side, the student side, the teacher side, when we go pandemic, do we just want to do Canvas with no supplemental programs? Which is just content online? Do we want to do Canvas with iReady? Do we want to do Canvas with AR? Knowing that, this seat on the bus, no one's going to like it. There's no perfect answer that everyone will like. And so that's the thing that we're going to have to really get to. Yes, Mr. Wood, LMS is short for Learning Management System. I'm sorry I said I did that. That's really for Friday.
Right, and I was going to say I had a second comment because I am the tech person on our team. Everybody comes to me with all the questions. And having some responsibility that for every teacher to be teaching their class, because I know that my site specifically, we were doing things as an entire grade level, and that kind of worked, but still having that ownership as a teacher to where I can do things that are necessary for my class.
You kind of broke up at the beginning of that last part of the statement. We got the part where you said continuity, or making sure that everyone's doing what they're doing, and then you made the last sentence. So,
well, just having to where teachers have ownership of their own class. So if I need to do something specifically for my class, I know at my school site, we did things as an entire grade level instead of this is what my students need. And I know that we were in emergency learning, so it was definitely different than a day-to-day classroom. But, you know, giving the teachers the freedom to do what they need for their own room.
We've talked about, I know backpack. So the question about backpack is in the chat room. We looked at backpack and I don't think we're gonna do backpack next year, primarily because it could not be implemented K-12 and we're trying to find that one thing because backpack requires the content for the courses to be all digitized. And what we have found is that at secondary levels, and at some courses in elementary level, social studies, the content is not digitized. So we could not put it in backpack. But it is something we absolutely looked at. And we're going to continue, you know, we're going to continue to do the, to evaluate and make sure we have content in there. And I know that Miss Taylor said, or you know, someone mentioned that they really like being able, Miss Guire, like to teach and customize what your students need. And that is our goal too, is to really have this framework that provides content, but allows you, the teacher, to supplement, to create, to do the things that make your classroom within this framework. And so that's really the lens by which we're doing this, is to provide a consistent user experience in terms of interface. You know, where do I log in? What device do I use for student on the student side? But then allows you, the teacher, the flexibility to have some content uploaded, but also to have access to content that you can make your own classroom. Because my social studies classroom, my social studies classroom looked different. The other social studies classroom of a teacher that I taught next door to, and so, and what we were both equally phenomenal.
And what I would say to that, if I can, just really quickly, is that in thinking about on our team how we can help with professional learning, professional development wise with that, is really delivering professional development that guides in the use of a lot of these tools and a lot of the content that's going to be available to show what are sort of the easiest streams, so that we are having that consistent experience for the user, the student, you know, and the parent. But then also we really, that is at the front and center of our mind, how to still respect that practitioner need. And that's going to be more, I mean, we've always done that, but that's going to become so very important in this, when we know there are going to be certain pieces that need to look the same for the good of the kids, you know, and but how do we still respect practitioner needs and practitioner practice and all that too. And so that is definitely a point that is at the front and center of our minds in that as well. But that's a great point to bring up.
I think that the last question I have is the district identifying additional supplemental content for curriculum. We have a plethora. We have dozens and dozens of apps at this point. Like that someone said, 40 apps at the elementary level. So we are not trying to add anything new. We feel really strongly that and so give me your feedback, but I feel, and we as a team, we feel really strongly like launching a one-to-one initiative with devices, launching a learning management system on those devices. That is a huge shift for our teachers, and we're not trying to add any new content in terms of new apps. We'll have to put content on the learning management system, and we're working on that. But in terms of like extra, that what we're doing is such a huge lift. We really are trying to not put more on people.
We've had a lot of conversations about just what does it mean to teach in a blended learning environment? What does it mean to teach online? Because we know we had to do it in an emergency situation once, right? And so now we all have sort of a learning curve on how do we do it when we know we have to do it in this blended way, or going forward, how do we all improve our practice in that? Because I think that's what we're all eager to do, is what I'm hearing.
Yes. We've got a couple comments here, hands up. So we're going to let Jan go ahead and share, and then we're going to go on to Shari. So Jan.
Thank you, Scott. This is Jan, SLP again. I just wanted to, we're talking about training, that the trainer model I found was very difficult with something as massive as learning how to write an IEP on a new IEP computerized system. It was train the trainer. Then there was going to be no training. And I guess myself and other people said, we can't do this without training. Then there was a half-day training where the computers didn't work, and the computer it was projected on the screen, you couldn't see, it was so tiny. And then we're expected to implement this program while the program's still being developed. Changes are happening all the time, but we're not told the changes. So I would like to be fully trained on what you want me to implement before that program is rolled out, and not until that program is working.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I think just to kind of start on that, because those are some concerns that we share as well. We have kind of a plan to within, and I think it's safe to say, the next few weeks, start rolling out some early micro PD about what we're talking about here with just this mind shift to what is blended learning pedagogy, what is online pedagogy first, right? The big picture concepts, because I know for me, having been an English teacher, very different thing to have a student interact with text, to interact with online without me in front of them there, right? But then also what I hear and what I agree with, after we make that initial mind shift, there's going to need to be some more content and process experience PD. And so to make that not really overloading, we're trying to, Ms. Gregory, Mr. Seifert and I have worked together. We're trying to put out some sort of short, quick bursts of PD, if that makes sense, that are kind of phased like that, to start with sort of first, here's the piece, the process, the reasoning, and then here are the actual tools, or here are the actual ways, protocols that we're going to implement that, because as you said, we know some of this is a plane being built while it's flying sort of thing, so that we can all come to these understandings, I want to say, at least on some kind of a timeline to. But then we're going to work to start getting some of that out in the next few weeks as well, because we know everyone is eager to learn how those things look. And so I think that kind of starts the answer to your question. I think there's a lot to build on with that in the future too, as we're trying to figure out how that looks. But our priority is to talk, yes, about
when you start to communicate that out, you'll start to implement maybe a one-page communication or one-way communication, so that when PD starts coming out, that we are notified of it.
Yeah, so I think what we too share concerns about the train the trainer, and so this is too big of a lift to Mr. Walgamu's point. Like, think every time you say something gets dropped or something gets right, and not by sense of commission, but by sense of omission. And so it really is going to be pushed out at each individual teacher level. And our vision, we've talked about it, is really to be just in time for that teacher. So the idea is not that we're going to say, on Monday at 2, everyone come into this. Right. It's true story. I have a 4-year-old at home, and 2 o'clock is not a great time in our house. And so maybe for me, 9:30 at night when everyone's in bed is the time that I can access it and be thoughtful. We want the audience to be able to engage in a meaningful way for them. It's not about my schedule. It's about what works for the audience. And and so that's really the idea of us putting it out there in these like these bursts, these 10 or 15 on different topics, so that you can sit and get it in a way that meeting everybody where they are. And so if you have an hour, if you're somebody who's maybe a little longer in the tooth and you're not like the Instagram culture, right, or TikTok culture, like we got it, we can sit for an hour and we'll watch it 4 of them. But if you're somebody who really only has 15 minutes at a time, as a mom with little people at home, that's my reality, we can just do it in bursts when we get in. And so when we're hiding in the closet eating the Oreo cookies.
So Shari has a comment, and then before she does, I think when we get to the point where we do PD, if there is a way to just share screen or do something where you walk everyone through, or provide them the ability to maybe do it before they come to provide feedback or whatever it is, we could, that when we discuss PD, that whatever these micro pieces are, if there's something that the teachers could walk through, provide feedback and that kind of thing, and just so that we would do it before, just a test audience on that part. And so Shari?
Yeah, I'm going to sneak my comment in and then hope that it's kind of the last comment. because
Yes.
it's related to technology and not so much to communication, but I think it's an important one, unless anybody else has any burning comments tying back to communication. But I think the most important piece here is going to be our IT people. I mentioned it in the chat. I made a couple of comments in there. Not all the IT people on sites are, they're not all created equal, to say it nicely. And so if we're going to be increasing the use of technology and communication, then we have to have very well trained IT people at our sites, dedicated, full-time, not teaching classes to kids unless it's IT specific, it's how to use your computer specific kind of stuff. But we've got to have full-time people on sites that can go around and handle these problems so that I can continue to focus on teaching.
Yes.
Very, very important.
So let me jump in on that. So I mentioned earlier something called white glove service. So we are so not to steal Mr. Williamson's thunder. So next week, pretend you're surprised when he says like, oh, you're amazing. So we are contracting with, and I'm going to try and get it as right as I know it to be. We are contracting, whatever it's called, with a company called CDW. It's an industry leader for the Chromebooks. They have our devices in a warehouse that has to get shipped from another continent. So fingers crossed it gets here on time. But the devices are coming from a company called CDW. CDW, as part of our contract with them, and they were the cheapest ones, are providing what's called white glove service. So what that means is that these devices do not have to be imaged by the school. These devices are not maintained at the school in terms of support. So Gabe Gregory is going to bring his device home, come back to school. There's a problem with connectivity. There's going to be 1 or 2, 3 things that the TechCon will be trained on doing, because these devices are not really, they're all web-based devices. The device is not working. The schools are going to have 5% overage in devices. And so the idea is that student tries, they go to the office, they try to get it fixed. And if it doesn't, they have a device right there to replace it with. The subcontractor, which is, I'm going to say IDG or TIG. TIG is going to come and pick up the device and manage the device and return it to the school and to the student. And so the idea is that the individual teacher and the individual TechCon the teacher is not doing technology, is not a technology expert. There's no expectation that they do that. They become technology experts. The TechCon is going to do the 1 or 2 or 3 things, and and Mr. Williamson can explain it better than I. But then it's going to get shipped off, and there's going to be extras, and they're going to send the kid right back to class with the extra one, with the overage. The company, TIG, has been doing this support around the nation and around the state of Florida already. It's not a startup thing, right? And so, but what they are doing is they are going to put in a Leon County branch. And so they're moving they're going to move an office in the storefront here, so that the school, and it's not going to be you, is going to pick up the phone and say, I need to pick up, or they're going to be scheduled weekly, and they're going to, come pick up the devices, do the thing, it's back. That is the extent of which I know, but I wanted to just address, I heard a couple of times, like the concerns regarding the TechCons. My understanding is that the one-to-one device management is not going to be implemented as maybe some other one-to-one initiatives in our county in the past, because we're including the white glove service for tech support. And so I hope they have fun cars like the Geek Squad or like Truly Nolan, and that we can see them coming. But the idea is that now what schools will have to do is figure out the process by which these devices are going to be distributed and maintained. So is it going to be, that's what I was mentioning to Mr. McLean earlier, is it going to be like everybody, we're going to run a homeroom the first week, secondary folks, elementary folks, you already do. We're going to do device management on the 3rd day of school. Title I schools, we know that for us folks who are Title I folks, families don't really come the first week or 2. So do we push it off? What does that look like? Do you house it in the do you house the inventory process in the meeting? It's a beep boop. That's my really, it's like boop, 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 boop. So when they get to the schools and the boxes and you open them up, and someone is going to have to boop it to the student's name. And so who's doing that? That's the lift. And then if you're going to do it at homeroom, you know, and you're going to distribute A to B1, BI in, you know, second high school, and B, whatever, J to C at a, right? Like that's going to be the lift at the school side. And we began having those conversations last week with our principals, but Mr. Williamson will be here next week. That's what
Awesome.
I know.
And we're going to limit to one last Jan, and then we're going to kind of conclude for today. So Jan, your hand was up, so we'll let you go. And then.
Yes, thank you. I just want to say too, when directions are given, if they can include a Droid phone. I had that problem. Our IT person's wonderful, but all directions came on an iPhone, and I have a Droid. And so I needed to go figure out all that by myself. But she was extraordinarily helpful, so I'm not complaining about her at all. But a lot of us have Droids. It was suggested to me by another person in my school that I get a different phone. So we have to have Droid directions too, please. And thank you. So I'll just say thank you so much for this meeting, for genuinely listening to all of us. I just appreciate this so very much. Thank y'all. Bye.